guys, once again, welcome. Thank you for joining today. I know there's a lot of things going on. We do appreciate your time. We will start now. To ask a question, use the chat window of WebEx, and you can ask at any time. One of the panelists will answer. We have a very packed agenda today. After a quick welcome, we will have Dr. Joshi talk to us about his journey. The Alumni Association, before we formed the recent one, there's been a lot of things have happened. He's going to talk about that. Mohammed Sharif is an active member, and he's going to give us his perspectives. After that, Dr. Venkat Srinivasan will talk about his journey, and he's also going to talk about decarbonization, which he's focused on. And then we'll have Dr. Naveen Kumar talk to us about all the support, how CECRI and he and a couple of scientists provide to us. And also we will announce the board, as in how the board is structured and what we want to do and things like that. Anand Natarajan will close with what we're going to do going forward next year and the years coming along after that and close. Let me start off with the alumni's purpose. It's very simple. I'll read it. The first line I can read verbatim pretty much. To fund and promote education and research among student, faculty, staff, and alumni of CECRI. I think it's a very straightforward thing. There should be no ambiguity. And now the vision and mission, right? We only took a few of the many items we have in the bylaws. So if you want more details, we can provide it to you later, either in one of the groups or it's all in the bylaws. But anyway, the first one is to promote CECRI's engineering program, which is us, the BTech program. We want to provide mentoring, employment, and networking opportunities for students and alumni. And we want to develop them not just from getting a job, but also help them through entrepreneurship and things like that. Help students transition into the workforce, as in, you're a student and then you want to get into the workforce, and how does that work? Formalize relationships with our institute, students, faculty, and staff. That's the other thing we want to do. And also, we want to embrace a multidisciplinary approach to serve not just the careers, but also lives of alumni. We want to look at everything, all different aspects of any person. So let's start with Dr. Joshi. He's going to talk about how we have gotten here, how the CECRI Alumni was formed, association was formed, and stuff. Dr. Joshi, go ahead.
Thank you, Ashok. So, as you all know, we started as a casual chat on our BTech and alumni Telegram group, and during this chatting, we discovered that there were some students, not everyone, like we are facing problems at the workplace due to some work-related timelines, pressure, mismanagement, the company, and conflicts with co-workers. So we identified, we did some basic research, and we identified that a career-related guidance program is necessary to reduce the problems arising from communication-related errors. And therefore, by having this program, we can have a career growth of the graduate students. To start off with, we started the BTech Career Excellence Group in response with a team of 6 members. Everybody should know that it's Mohammed Sharif, Mohan, Raghu, Shaktivel, Sokalingam, and me. So from that, we started fundraising, and we collected over 1 lakh to fund this program. And we conducted the first program successfully in March 2019. And from that, we covered different batches, 2020, 2021, and 2022 this year. So thanks to the director for the approval to conduct this program on campus and for the awesome support. And of course, our alumni and students, everybody helped each other, and then we finally end up with successful conduct of this program. Then 2020, last year, we formed this, we created the website, CECRIALUMNI.org, and that from the discussion with Shokalingam Karpaya, and we we purchased the website domain on May 3rd, 2020. So at that time, we got more team members. Ashok, Anand, Rajan were invited to the team, and we had a talk with director, and the director approved our plan to move forward with the formation of the CECRI Alumni organization. So from there on, last year we had many developments, and we created the online forum. Rajarajan created the online forum, which is the forum.cecrialumni.org, and we started enrollment on every batch level. We identified champions to every batch, and then we did start the enrollment. And today, as of today, we have over like 490 members, approximately close to 500. 500 members registered in the portal. So with this solid enrollment, we are able to routinely make some announcement, and we are able to reach the alumni through this network. So this website and the whole support from the alumni and everyone have made us. So using the website, WhatsApp, and Telegram applications, we make the routine announcement. And in the current year, there are one more member, Yogesh. He joined the team, and he supported us as a treasurer. On August 25th, 2021, we registered our alumni organization in the United States, based in California. So with the tremendous support from directors, CFE, alumni, and students, we were able to develop and form the core noble element, which is our CECRI Alumni organization, which is we call that at the entity as CECRI Alumni Association. We have key plans lined up to maintain and sustain the organization, which will be later shared by Anand. So I would like to end my talk with this.
Cool. So next we'll have some perspectives from a very active member. Mohammed Sharif has helped us a lot in many different aspects. So Mohammed, please unmute and you can start speaking.
Can you hear me, Ashok?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Hello, dear seniors and juniors. I'm Mohammed Sharif from 2009 batch. I'm one of those guys that Joshi mentioned. We are working from beginning. You might have received annoying surveys and fund requests from us unofficially. So we can promise hereafter you will receive the same, but officially, because now we have an organization. Believe me, those surveys that you have filled has shaped this organization, and here we are, from a few enthusiastic alumni to a registered organization. So we are so proud of what we have achieved. This organization is an inevitable outcome of the good intents of alumni, to organize the career excellence programs and fund for the people who are in needs and help people get job and so much. It's unlimited what we can achieve from this organization. Within this journey, there are a lot of people participated on and off. I would like to thank all of them who participated, who provided funds to the needy people, who connected people who needed job to the right contacts. I'm happy to be part of this legacy. I'll always be part of this legacy, and I'm gonna welcome all these new members who are gonna join this association. Thanks, Ashok. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Sharif. So let's move on. So next we'll have one of our own alumni, Dr. Venkat Srinivasan. He's going to talk about his journey and all work he is doing. So let me just talk a little bit about who Dr. Venkat is, for those who don't know. I think most people know him, but anyway, Dr. Venkat is a senior scientist at Argonne National Lab. He is the director of the Argonne Collaborative Center for Energy Storage Sciences and deputy director of the Joint Center of Energy Storage Research. In November 2020, Venkat worked closely with the US Department of Energy to create Lithium Bridge, a unique public-private partnership aimed to bridge the supply chain gap in the United States. Dr. Venkat's research interest is in developing better battery materials for electric vehicles and grid-scale storage using a combination of experimental tools. Prior to joining Argonne, Venkat was a staff scientist at the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, where he held various leadership positions. Venkat graduated from CECRI in the year 1995. So, Dr. Venkat, go ahead and you can start speaking.
Thank you, Ashok, and I want to make sure that I thank all the people that invited me to come here. It is an absolute pleasure to be able to have a chance to sort of say something to the people that largely shaped my life, I think the organization. But before I do that, I just want to make sure that I acknowledge a tragic loss that happened to the folks from the CECRI family itself, but also a person from the 1995 batch that we all held near and dear. Some of you may know T. Karthik, or TK, or Topaz, we used to call him. He died unexpectedly 3 days ago. The cause appears to be some sort of a coronary issue. This is a devastating loss. The 1995 batch, the WhatsApp group is sort of really shocked. I think we don't quite know how to respond to it. You will see some of the comments that I took from that batch, and I put that up for you guys to read. You know, TK was an amazing guy, right? He was always smiling, he was always helpful, he was always passionate, and he was always bringing folks together. I remember him as a tinkerer. He used to kind of play with his diodes and his op amps, and he was a born leader and really had an entrepreneurial spirit in him. I've been sort of seeing that he had incredible success in the Dallas area, starting restaurants, and I can see why. He always had that kind of a sort of a passion to do things. The WhatsApp group, these things happen where you have a WhatsApp group, but then it's you need a few people to sort of keep it alive. And he was the one that kept the 1995 batch WhatsApp group alive. He had a lot of strong views on what was right and what was wrong, but really, ultimately, he was a nice person, a humble person, a modest person who really brought everybody together. He will be dearly missed, right? There is an online memorial that you can see the link for that there. I'll make sure I paste it in the chat window for those who want to sort of say something. Any loss of life, I think, is hard, but one from our own family sort of hits very, very hard. Let us take a moment to sort of acknowledge this loss for the CECRI family. We can go to the next slide. I'm going to talk about something today that, Ashok, if you could jump to the next one, to talk about something that I think, I hope that TK would have been very interested in hearing this presentation, because I want to talk about decarbonization, which I think is a challenge of our time. It requires a lot of passionate people like TK who sort of bring that kind of passion. I hope to tell you a little bit about why one has to be passionate to solve this problem, but also along the way, tell you a little bit about what I did. I'll talk about 3 things. You can see that in that list there. I'm going to tell you sort of in effect that we are at a cusp of something that is dramatically going to change in the energy economy. These things happen once every 100 years. And I think we are at the point where the next 20, 30, 40 years is going to show up as a dramatic change in the way we use energy, we drive our cars, and we start to think about how we sort of manufacture things in a different fashion as we go to the future. I've been lucky enough to be part of that journey. And part of the reason for that is because of CECRI Alumni, and I want to sort of spend a little bit of time telling you about that part. And ultimately, right, I think irrespective of the field you've chosen, I chose to be in the sort of the scientific area, you might be choosing something else. I think we're at an age where electrochemistry is going to be super important. And we all have that common framework because we came from an organization dedicated to this. And irrespective of what your field might be, there might be opportunities to kind of think about how we can solve this huge challenge and bring that passion. I'll sort of touch upon that also in my presentation. But let me begin by telling you why decarbonization is important. If you can go to the next slide, Ashok. So decarbonization is important very simply because we have to find a way to reverse climate change, right? It is arguably the single biggest challenge that we face, other than things like the pandemic and the fact that we had inequality going on. Just to give you some numbers, right? Everybody talks about the 1.5 degree pathway. That's the one you see in the bottom of the graph. You could see that today, the way things are going, we're going to be at 2.7 to 3 degrees change in terms of the sort of the global temperature, and that is going to be devastating. COP26 that happened a month ago came and went. Everybody went to Glasgow. As far as I could tell, nothing came out of it in terms of real promises. So we are, in effect, going to be screwed, I think, if we don't do much. And so we have to somehow find a way to go from that 3 degrees Celsius rise, which is now projected by 2100, down to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And the reality is that people like me don't influence policy. So the only thing we can do is find a way to bend that curve, and that means that we've got to pull carbon out, right? That is the single biggest thing that people like me can focus on, and people like you all should be focusing on. And one way you can pull carbon out is by making sure that we have an amazing battery, a battery that is incredibly cheap, that lasts a long time, can store energy in a very efficient fashion, does not go up in flames, and ultimately is one that all of us can put in our backyard and put in our car so that we can drive around, right? So that's the path that I've chosen to address this problem. There are many other paths one can take, and I'll sort of touch upon that as I go through the presentation. But let me talk about the battery path specifically. So you can see here the things that batteries have already done and are going to be doing in the near future. First, pretty much transportation is going to become electric. It might take us 25 years, 30 years to get there, but it is going to become electric when it comes to our roads, right? So light duty cars, I actually saw Tesla just drive by. Light duty cars are becoming the reality all over the United States, but certainly the rest of the world, it's slowly catching up, right? Europe is going to be probably leading ahead in terms of electrification of light duty. What's also happening is people are wondering, how do we decarbonize the rest of the sector? Airplanes have become super important. There is a concept called the vertical takeoff and landing. VTOL is what it's called. Air taxis is what some people call it. For a variety of reasons, making them into sort of electrified battery packs has a lot of sense to it just because of various ways in which these things operate. So there's a big move to kind of do that. We are seeing startup companies talk about it now. The hope is that in the next 5 to 10 years, we start to get there. That's on the transportation side. On the grid, the easiest way to remove the the fossil fuels from the grid is to go towards renewables, solar and wind. The problem is the sun doesn't shine all the time, the wind doesn't blow all the time. So what do you have to do? You got to store energy. That's where a battery comes in. So if you can find a way to get more batteries that are cheaper, then you can start to make the grid more renewable. Both of these pathways, making transportation completely, sort of decarbonized and the grid decarbonized, requires better batteries, right? And ultimately, that's why there's a lot of excitement about batteries as we look to what is happening today. Go to the next slide, Ashok. Let me tell you a couple of things that is happening in the United States. On the left side, you see the kind of the numbers that people have been throwing around for demand for electric vehicles. These numbers are all from last year. They're all completely wrong because in the last 6 months, every car company has announced that they're going to go electric. Right? So right now, if you kind of look at the United States, right, our battery manufacturing capacity is somewhere around 60 gigawatt hour a year. In the next 10 years, we have to be somewhere in the order of 1 terawatt hour a year. We're talking about a 20 times increase in battery manufacturing capacity that is needed just for the United States. Now take the rest of the world, right? You can start to imagine all these things that are going to go on. For those of you living in India, in the last 6 months, there have been multiple things that have happened in India related to electrification. You probably know this better than I do if you're living there, but it's been a dramatic change world over. So that's the first big thing that's going on. There's growing demand for electrification, and that's very important. If there's no demand, nobody does anything. The second thing that you see on the bottom right is the vast private capital that has gone into this space. So in the United States in the last 2 years, there's been billions of dollars that has gone into the electrification space, to battery companies, to car companies, to hydrogen companies, things that are going to help us start to move towards products that can have an impact on this game of electrification, whether that's going to be in the vehicle space or if it's going to be in the grid space. There is a lot of private capital that's coming in, and that's because of the sense that there is a huge market. So one should be able to take the private capital, put it into companies, deploy them, and ultimately the private capital can get a return on investment on that. So that's a second big thing that's going on. The third thing that's happening, and I'm going to be specific to the US just because it's a country that I have the most knowledge on, but you can copy and paste other countries and you'll probably see something similar. The administration here in the United States in the last 8 months has announced that they want to have 50% of new car sales go towards electrification. Right now it's 2%. So we're talking about a dramatic change that has to happen in the next 10 years, going from 2% to 50%. They've also dumped a lot of money into it. There's $6 billion, actually approximately $7 billion that's going to go into the electrification market, which is going to help the private capital cost match. So we're now getting government signals that suggest that there is going to be a market for these batteries because the market demand is there, the public signal is coming in, there's a private signal coming in. These three forces are going to come together to dramatically change the picture for energy storage as we go to the future. If you can go to the next slide. I've been super lucky because I'm in the middle of all of this revolution. It's, you'll see from the next slide that luck is the actual reason for it. There is no real planning here, but I'll sort of talk about that in just a second. Very quickly, in terms of the research that I do, I develop better batteries for transportation in other sectors. My own research is in continuum modeling. Teaching has always been something I'm super interested in. I'll just give you an example of this, right? I started a course for a full semester course in batteries when I was at the University of California, Berkeley, and Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. But more importantly, I think there is a need for us to start thinking deeply about how we're going to retrain people. Meaning, if you can imagine, if we move away from an economy that is driven by fossil fuels, say, we have all these fossil fuel fired plants, or we have all these cars that are running on internal combustion engines, and we suddenly say we're going to move towards batteries. Well, what happens to all those people, right? So we've got to think deeply about how we are going to get the people that are stuck in a different economy towards this new economy. And I think that's something that I think you all have to think about very deeply, and certainly something I think about very deeply. There is also questions of environmental justice. So you can imagine people who have money can obviously jump into the next big thing. People who don't have the money are the ones that struggle. So it's very important for us to think deeply about how we can get everybody along in this journey towards a new energy economy. So I think about that quite a bit. The last thing in the bottom I'll say is that energy storage is a huge challenge. It's a kind of challenge that requires multidisciplinary teams. Teams of hundreds of people have to come together. I've been lucky enough that I've been part of those teams doing various things. Those are the first three bullets related to sort of more R&D. The last bullet that you see, which Ashok told you about, LiveBridge, is a kind of a national partnership where we really are going to be working deeply with both the federal government, the state governments, with universities, with community colleges, and hundreds of private companies across the United States to sort of really think about how are we going to get the supply chain for these batteries for these different sectors. So that's sort of the important journey. So let me now tell you, as Ashok was saying, my journey. To start off with you can go to the next slide, Ashok. With a very simple trajectory version of this, this is the one that you'll read on my CV. I came to Argonne in 2016 because Argonne is the lab to be when it comes to batteries. Before that, I was at Berkeley for many, many, many years because Berkeley is the other lab that is great for batteries. I was also very happy with the weather. I was also kind of incredibly lazy and didn't want to look for another job. So I was there for 15 years. Before that, I was at Penn State, partly because if you want to be at a national lab, you got to do postdoc. So I did a postdoc at Penn State. And before that, I was in South Carolina because many people in this field go through South Carolina. And if I have to tell the story, I would say that in 1991, I joined CECRI because I knew that I wanted to be in batteries and I wanted to decarbonize. So I decided to go to CECRI. But all of us know that's not the truth. In 1991, pretty much every person in India, I think, wanted to get an engineering degree or a medical degree. I was one of those people. My dad convinced me saying that, CECRI is an amazing place because it's an amalgamation of two exciting fields, electrical engineering and chemical engineering. And I thought that was super profound. I think he was making it up to kick me out of the house, basically. But it worked because I went and joined CECRI. That's what I did, right? And basically, that journey over those 4 years, and all of you have been through this journey, was amazing, partly because of the number of friendships that we've made. So let me now tell you the actual version of what happened. If you can click on the next slide. So over those 4 years at CECRI, right, we made a bunch of friends. Many of them were going to the United States. And it turns out some of them landed up in the University of South Carolina. And also call out Gauri, who I think many of you might know. Gauri is an amazing personality, actually. He lives in Chennai. Gauri was very well known in South Carolina at the time. And I think if we don't know if he was productive in South Carolina, but all we knew is that people thought he was productive. So they wanted more people like Gauri. So I think after that, Murali, who you see next to Gauri there, and below on the bottom left, and then Bala, who you see next to Gauri, both went at some point to South Carolina. They started making an incredible impression on all the people there. One day, maybe 6 months before I was leaving for South Carolina, I got a call from Anand Shrikmar, who you see on the bottom right, who basically said something about, would you like to come to South Carolina? And he said something about how profound statement about the amalgamation of electrical or something like that, which I thought was amazing. So I decided that maybe that's what I should do next, go to South Carolina. I was very lucky. I was very happy to be able to do that. And one of my roommate for the first 6 months was actually Pankaj Arora, who you see in the bottom middle there. These guys were incredibly helpful, both in terms of sort of showing me a path of what I could do, but also allowing me to integrate into the South Carolina world. I spent 5 years in South Carolina. It was an amazing time. And then I went to Penn State. In Penn State, what was happening was sort of funny. What had happened was that people had heard about CECRI and the fact that people from CECRI were doing a lot of amazing things in the United States. So when I was in Penn State as a postdoc, I started getting professors asking me, are there more people from CECRI who are graduating who they can bring in as graduate students? So the thinking and the trend had changed by the time I had graduated, certainly, and it is because of some of the people's pictures that you see there. Another thing that happened simultaneously, right? You see Sundaram Krishnamurthy's picture pop up there. So what had happened was that even though many of us, you see these pictures, were doing electrochemistry, hydrogen, electroplating, batteries, things like that, there were also people going to other parts of the field. So in this case, Krishnamurthy actually moved to catalysis, and he went to catalysis, graduated, and then went to University of California, Berkeley for a postdoc. So around the year 2000, when I was sort of thinking about what to do next, I really wanted to go to the University of California, Berkeley to work for this person by name John Newman. Turns out that I had tried to go there in the end of 2000, but I couldn't because he didn't have a postdoc at the time. Gauri had actually moved to California. He was connected to Professor Newman and urged me to go back and reconnect, which I did. And ultimately, Professor Newman had an opening, which I was excited to take on. And one of the first people I called was actually Sundaram Krishnamurthy, who then told me stories about the housing prices and prices in the Bay Area, in Berkeley, and also the sort of the homelessness and the crime and all of that. It kind of scared me sufficiently enough that I was very careful when I moved there. But again, a connection to an alumni that was incredibly important for me as I went into the Berkeley groups. That alumni connection continued. If you can click one more button, Ashok, where some years after I was at Berkeley, I got connected again to Murali. Murali had left South Carolina, gone to IBM, and then came to California to work for a company, and ultimately founded a battery company called Innovix, which actually recently went public. I actually took a sabbatical from Lawrence Berkeley, went to Innovix, and that year was fantastic for me, and the connection I've had since then for Innovix taught me the lesson and the importance of taking science and moving it to market. The importance of doing things at a scale where you can manufacture and get them onto the market, something I had not appreciated before that. That lesson that I learned through Innovix allowed me to start thinking deeply about how can a national lab system work closely with industry to make products happen faster and sooner and at a scale where we can have an impact on decarbonization. So I created a consortium called CalChart, which was specific to California. And then those lessons that I learned through those years ultimately led me to creating LiveBridge a couple of months ago, which really we're hoping can be a big partnership across the United States to have a big impact on the battery supply chain. So again, a lot of help from my friends. So that's a quote from the Beatles. For those of you who are watching the Peter Jackson sort of trilogy now, it's an amazing thing. So I thought I'll put that up there. And to finish off with the Beatles analogy, a long and winding road as opposed to sort of the straightforward path that I outlined here. So this is 2021. So let me finish off by telling you a little bit of where I think the world is going to go. If you can go to the next slide. So as I was saying before, decarbonization is the challenge of our time. If you look at that sort of pie chart on the left, you will see that transportation accounts for a significant fraction of this. Obviously, we want to go to electric cars, electric planes, trucks, ships, everything has to become electric. So some form of storage, whether it's a battery, a hydrogen-based system, some sort of a carbon neutral liquid fuel that is goes through an electrochemical combustion, all of that is going to be important. Electricity production has to go carbon neutral. Think about solar and wind, that becomes very important. And so again, batteries are very important for that particular aspect. Agriculture, there are a lot of machinery there that use fossil fuels today. We've got to find a way to start moving them towards other sectors. Buildings, there are a lot of things you can do, including LED lighting. But really, you got to think about the fact that in the end of the day, if you take buildings and even if you do demand response and things like that, you might need a storage device. The last one that everybody's focused on is industry. And if you can click the button, turns out industry is one of the hardest sectors to decarbonize. So Ashok, if you can go to the next click. Thank you. So if you kind of look at the top there are the top 4 industries that are very difficult to decarbonize: ethylene, ammonia, steel, and cement. The reason for that is because some of these require incredibly high heat. Ammonia is a great example. So what we're thinking about now is how can we move away from fossil fuels for these things? In some cases, it's going to take hydrogen, which means that people who understand electrolysis are going to be extremely important for the next 20 years. If you can also find a way to move away from using sort of the what I would call high temperature reactions towards electrochemical reaction, then you can have a big impact also. What I show on the table is the possible reactions that can happen. Very, very hard, but also important. The main message I want to give you is that if you look into the next 20, 30 years, probably electrochemists are going to be the new software engineers, right? Or the people that are going to be making a huge impact as we go to the future. Now, I chose to be in electrochemistry. Many of you are not in electrochemistry. But it turns out that if you're passionate about this problem, it doesn't matter what field you're in. You could be in journalism. Dindy, for example, connected with me a few days ago and put me in touch with one of his fellow journalists because he wanted to talk about fast charging of batteries. It takes people like that to sort of influence the community and the world about what we need to do. You could be in sales, you could be in marketing, you could be in a completely different area, right? So for example, I got a call from one of my 1995 batchmates, Ram Raghavan, who's in a sort of a tool company that does a lot of high temperature and sort of harsh conditions cutting tools, and he was talking about how can they have an impact in the sort of the lithium extraction and the cobalt extraction. Again, it doesn't matter what field you've chosen. You could be in economics, you could be in finance, you could be in sales, you could be in journalism. If you're passionate about the subject of sort of decarbonization and changing the problems you're facing with climate change, the grounding we have in CECRI and the connections we have in CECRI, I think allow us to find a way to sort of contribute towards that, because I think underlying all of this is going to be this incredible need for electrochemistry and electrochemical engineering. I'll kind of give you the analogy and I'll finish off by talking about MIT. MIT, I'm sure, is a great school. I've never studied there. I'm sure they teach you all sorts of wonderful things. But every MIT person will tell you that one of the biggest things they have going for them is the Alumni Association. That's because they have connections that can take them anywhere, right? An email to one alumni gets them in touch with other people that ultimately leads them to do something very different and very interesting. I think we have the opportunity with the CECRI alumni, and irrespective of the field that you've chosen, hopefully you find this area to be of excitement to you. It is a problem that we have to solve, and if you find that to be interesting, I think alumni can help you get there. With that, let me stop. Thank you.
Dr. Venkat, that was really amazing. That was really well put together, amazing, and thanks for that message you sent out. I do want to tell people, if you have questions, please do put in the chat window so Dr. Venkat can answer them. We have a few more things on the agenda, but for now, we'll take a short pause. If you have questions, please go ahead and ask.
The audience are not muted, right?
No, the audience are muted. They can ask the question in the chat window. Santosh, are you seeing any questions specific to Dr. Venkat's talk?
Not yet.
Okay, maybe I'll ask a question. One of the questions is this. Of course, with batteries, it's very clear that it helps in decarbonization. Now, my question, Dr. Venkat, is this. But to manufacture a battery, you need raw materials moved from one place to another. One country to another. So there is some carbon emissions there. There's also the carbon emissions required for manufacture. And also towards the end of the life cycle of the battery, you have to either recycle or maybe it perishes or something. That is putting carbon into the atmosphere, right? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so that's a fantastic question, right? So one of the things we do is the life cycle analysis, LCA, as we call it. It's very important to count every emission that comes out. And ultimately, you've got to find a way to decarbonize all of that. I'll give you a sort of a quick statistic. So just to be very clear, today, as long as the electricity that you're using to charge your battery comes from a reasonably clean source, hopefully it's not a fossil fuel source, could be nuclear, could be renewables, then you are net positive, LCA, right? That's important to state that. However, if you kind of go back and dig a little bit deeper, you'll find out that to make an electric car is 50% more energy intense than it is to make a gasoline car. And that all comes from the battery, right? And one of the most important problems in that is there are various heating steps and stuff like that that involve high temperature heat. That is all using some sort of a fossil fuel today. So frankly, industrial decarbonization, whether that is mining all the way to making, including the battery, I think is one of the most important things we have to worry about. So recycling that you brought up and the emissions of supply chain that you brought up, this is one of the reasons why I created Liebridge. There are a lot of geopolitical problems, also sort of concentration of certain elements in certain countries. You don't really want to have one country dominate everything. COVID, I think, taught us that lesson. Liebridge really was created to find a way to diversify the supply chain and make it secure. But my view is in the next 30 years, we've got to look at every place where carbon comes out and find a way to put it out.
Thank you.
There's a question from Rajan for Dr. Venkat. This is how about solar? Does this need to charge the batteries? Why solar has not picked up as good as batteries?
Well, actually, solar has taken off more than batteries, and there's a reason for that, right? Actually, historically, solar prices are very high, and then mass manufacture of crystalline silicon solar cells happened, I don't know, must be like 13, 14 years ago now. And the cost of solar has plummeted. Today, in the United States, solar electricity is cheaper than fossil fuel electricity. That is the reality. The problem is the sun doesn't shine all the time. So solar per batteries still are expensive. So if the cost of battery comes down, and it has to come down by a factor of 3, then solar plus battery cost will be comparable to fossil fuel electricity cost baseline, meaning you can get steady electricity using that concept. But solar, it actually has taken off pretty much, I think, all over the world, frankly. It is the cheapest way to make electricity today in most parts of the world.
There's also another question from Manjunathan. It's people who are pro-oil argues that production recycling lithium is equally polluting.
Yeah, so it depends on where the lithium is coming from, right? So, Ashok had brought up the idea of emissions. There is a concept of embodied emissions, right? You really have to ask yourself, how did you make lithium, cobalt, nickel, for that matter? They are pretty badly done in certain parts of the world. I think that the whole idea of sort of saying, this is the classic thing in the United States, right? You don't want to pollute in the United States, but if somebody else does it, they're okay. That mentality has to change. And to the point that the question, right, it's a fantastic question that you're asking, right? There are clean ways to pull lithium from the ground, as it turns out. Actually, it's electrochemicals, electrodialysis that does it. But irrespective, we've got to do things like that in order for us to be able to make an argument that we're moving towards the future. We are not doing that today, partly because of the economics and the geopolitics and all of that, but we've got to move towards that.
Thank you. That's a question from Mohan Kumar. Is there any research going on battery waste parallelly?
Yeah, so this is actually in Oregon. We have a center called Recell, focused on battery recycling. The way we think about this is you first want to take a battery for the application you want. You then want to reuse it in a second life. And then ultimately, when it ultimately has no charge, you want to be able to pull it out, and you want to ensure that you're getting out every element. And you do that economically, but you also do this without throwing away bad things into the atmosphere. And you hope that at the end of the day, that gives you the circular economy that you're hoping for. Things have to get circular in the next 30 years for us to have a sustainable planet.
Question from Dr. Sundar Mahiman. Comments about redox flow for grid storage.
Yeah, so there's a separate talk I can give on the subject of what kind of a battery should be used for what application. Turns out that if you look at the grid storage, right, you have to store energy everywhere from milliseconds all the way to even seasonal storage, 6 months, right? There's a whole time range of storage that you need. All the short time, meaning less than 6 hours, is probably going to be some sort of a lithium battery. Maybe it'll become sodium, but anyway, it's some sort of a lithium battery kind of equivalent. But if you go longer than 8 to 10 to 12 hours, right, lithium batteries start to look incredibly expensive. It's just hard to do it. So you got to start thinking about other chemistries. Flow batteries start to make sense for that. The problem is that, it's a tough subject, right? People forget. This is why I want to bring up the idea that, those the interactions I have with the Novics kind of taught me this lesson, right? In the end of the day, you can do great science, but you've got to make it cost effective from a market perspective. And flow batteries have always been the field where, because it's following lithium batteries, the cost is always high. And when you have an incumbent technology like lithium batteries where the cost is incredibly low, it's hard for a new technology to compete. So this is where, you got to have a nuanced and sort of holistic perspective, I think, in terms of how do you have market impact. And that is a combination of having great technology, but also having finance, but also policy, and all has to come together. That's where flow batteries are strong.
Question from Ganesh. What is the scenario for India?
That's a great question, right? So obviously, I've had multiple phone calls from people talking about the fact that, they think the Indian government and obviously private companies are all starting to think about electrification of vehicles. So that's becoming pretty common now. All the big companies, I think, are talking about it. I know personally companies that have actually gotten IP. I've had calls with major manufacturers in India at C-level people asking about what could they do to move towards this. So really active interest. I think that the whole concept of grid and solar, storage has been around for a while in India. I've had calls from that for quite some time. Obviously the Indian context is different. I think supply chain and things like that are going to be different. Indian manufacturing laws are also different. There are policies that prevent buying of batteries. It's better to do it locally. I think huge opportunities for those of you who live in India and are looking for something exciting to do. And if you're an entrepreneur, think about this field. It's a great time to be in this space. A lot of money, a lot of exciting things that one can do.
Question from Ranganathan. What are your ideas about the future of lead-acid batteries?
Actually, it's kind of funny that you ask. So, the lead-acid guys are all struggling because they're worrying that, the electric vehicle market is going to mean that nobody's going to buy SLI, start-on lighter ignition batteries anymore, right? Why would you want a second battery if you have a big lithium-ion battery sitting in your trunk? So we actually have a big project at Oregon working with the lead-acid battery industry, trying to increase the cycle life, meaning you have to remove sulfation basically, because they think that if you can get the cycle and calendar life of lead-acid batteries to be more than 10 years, then it's one of the cheapest chemistries one can put on the grid. And ultimately, remember I was talking about how we got to get the cost of batteries down for the grid. That's a way to get there. So there could be environmental problems with lead acid because some countries might not want to have lead running around. But certainly, if you can solve the cycle life problem, it is a chemistry like no other. You can't beat it. And recycling is amazing for that, right? You don't have to even worry about it.
That's a question from Deepan Bose. All the US auto oil emissions using technology from Japan or Korea, China, like LG, Panasonic, etc. Handful of startups are developing technology, companies like QuantumScape, SES, etc. Do you see opportunities for technology development now, and productionizing the technology is key? What is the role for electrochemists there?
Yeah, so I mean, a few things have happened, right? I mean, this is actually that's an important question. Traditionally, it has been pretty much impossible to compete with LG, CATL, Samsung, whatever, right? But this is where things have changed in the last 2 years. Like I was saying, a lot of companies have been able to take advantage of the incredible amounts of private capital that has come in. I mean, I haven't done the math recently, but I mean, I was doing this maybe a month ago. The amount of money that has gone from private capital to the battery industry is, I think, in the order of like 4 billion or something at this moment, right? It's an incredible amount of money. Now, that by itself is not enough, right? You still have to compete. But what it means is that these companies you've listed and others suddenly have the cash to go build manufacturing lines. And they can start to ask themselves, can they compete in terms of pure technology play against the LGs and the Samsungs? It's not so simple to compete against them from a pure cost perspective. So, hopefully all these companies have a nuanced view of how they think about cost and how they enter the marketplace. But there are companies that are doing that. And if you can kind of do that effectively, then I think you do have an opportunity to sort of expand the number of companies, the number of players that are out there. I will tell you, just as a reminder, that Tesla was nobody 10 years ago. And today, the whole world is where we are only because of Tesla. So there are times when small companies can have a huge impact in the world. What is the role of electrochemist? Man, think about it, right? Today, I don't know if any of the guys who are in these, Chokka or Murali or somebody, they are desperate to hire people. We need electrochemists. We need more than just electrochemists, but we need electrochemists all across the sector worldwide. We just don't have them. You can make them fast enough. So, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, if you were struggling thinking, why am I doing this? Well, it's because you just was 20 years too early, I think. This is the time to be an electrochemist.
That's a question from Sudan. When we move to electrification completely, we need more and more energy to charge those batteries. So his question is that, do we need more and more coal and fossil fuels to get energy for charging these batteries?
I don't know if this Sudan is the same Sudan from my batch. I hope it is. If not, it doesn't matter. I won't say hi. So great question. Ultimately, I think, so you might have seen this in the United States. The Biden administration has a target for carbon-free grid by 2035, meaning you have 3 pathways you can go after: nuclear, solar, wind. Maybe you can argue there are carbon neutral ways to do it, but those are the 3 primary pathways that you're trying to get there. It is a tall challenge. It's very difficult to do. I think getting up to 80% of renewable electricity or nuclear electricity is going to be relatively straightforward. I say that with quotes, relatively straightforward. The last 20% is going to be super hard and super expensive. But guess what? In the next 15 years, you're going to see that change, right? Like I said, solar is cheaper than fossil fuel-based electricity today. So more and more and more utility companies are going towards renewable electricity, not towards building coal and fossil fuel plants. So I think this is changing dramatically.
Question from Lincoln. What is the role of electrochemist with hydrogen infrastructure?
Front and center, folks. Chokka, I think we probably want to talk about this at some point. You got to make hydrogen. Electrolysis is the way you do that. There is actually a target in the United States for there's a number for, it's $1 per kilogram in 10 years, kind of a number. It's a huge challenge. You need people to understand, what does hydrogen do? How do you make hydrogen? How do you do it at scale? How do ion transport occurs through membranes? I mean, name it, right? All the stuff that you were probably taught and didn't pay attention to when you were in CECRI are the stuff that you need today. I will say the same thing goes for what you're going to do when you get the hydrogen. You could combust it, but you may want to take advantage of the fact that there's something called a fuel cell and want to put it and reverse it, right? That's very important. And the last thing I'll say is, hydrogen is a sort of a primary fuel, right? You can do all sorts of things with it. Many of them electrochemically. So again, goes back to say that if you're an electrochemist, great time to be doing this.
That's another question from Rajan. Why lithium-ion batteries for stationary applications? I understand lithium-ion battery is good for transportation due to high energy density, but for stationary application, weight does not matter. Why not focus on cheaper batteries such as nickel iron for storing solar power instead of lithium batteries?
Absolutely, that makes perfect sense. From an R&D perspective, there's a lot of things going on that are not lithium batteries. It comes down to this problem of market, right? If I'm a utility company trying to install something, what I want is to buy a battery from a reputed battery company that has incredible cycle life, with data that proves it, with a backing that if the company will never go bankrupt if there is a problem, at a price point that is incredibly cheap because their manufacturing scale is vast and massive, and they can give you incredible reliability. If you put all those metrics in place, what you do is you go choose a lithium battery. That is a reality. So even though it's not the best battery, it's flammable, it's not the thing that you want to be putting a megawatt hour of anywhere. It's the reality of what is happening in the marketplace, because that is the most ubiquitously cheapest, most reliable battery that we have today. Which is why I argue that it's important for us to think about other things, including finding a way to support small companies that are doing things that are not in that space with things like stationary storage.
A question from Isha. What will be the source of electricity for complete electrification? Major source depends on coal, fire power plants, and it's one of the concern of climate change.
Yeah, as I was mentioning before, right, we'll have to transition towards one of the things: nuclear, solar, wind. And that is happening, has to happen much faster. And ultimately, it'll come down to countries that decide they will not be building any more coal-fired plants. And that has to be very important. Again, I don't influence policy, but policy is going to be very important as we go to the future.
Question from Ashish. How can someone who is an electrochemist but not in batteries research contribute to this climate ultimate cause?
Yeah, I hope I sort of made that point, and maybe I didn't, and I'll sort of reiterate this, right? You could be in any field. You may not even be in the sciences, right? But if you're passionate about what I believe is the single biggest challenge we face, I think there is an opportunity to do something about it, right? Like I was pointing out, I mean, Dindy writes about energy all the time. He's a journalist, right? But that's important. You want the public to understand the challenge here, right? I'm a scientist, but half my job is doing science. The other half is communicating it, right? That's an incredibly important thing, right? You could be in finance. You got to be thinking about how are we going to monetize that. You could be in artificial intelligence, machine learning, right? There is a lot of things you want to be doing in this space. You could be in robotics, and there is things that should be doing in this space, right? So frankly, again, it all comes down to what your interest is, right? If your interest is in energy, it doesn't matter where you are. You could be in Wall Street, you could be in the lab somewhere. There is a way to contribute towards it. If you are, if you're passionate about something else, all power to you. But if you're passionate about the energy problem, your common basis here is very simple. You've got somebody you can send an email to because of your days in CECRI, and hopefully they can connect you up irrespective of what you're doing today and what your interests are.
Another question from Mohan Kumar. Comment on new materials other than lithium ion.
There's a lot of things there. Like I said, I have talks on this subject, right? Everything from silicon anodes to lithium metal, solid state, to sodium ion batteries, to magnesium batteries, to flow batteries, to aqueous zinc MnO2 batteries, to there's a variety of things there. It's probably a much bigger question than I can do justice in the couple of minutes that I have. But a lot of activity, both in what I would call next generation lithium ion, the sort of the beyond lithium ion, and beneath lithium ion, name it. There's a lot of things that I think is going on in the field.
There's the last question from just a second. That's the last question. How electroplating contribute in battery technology? Yeah,
I mean, it depends on the way you think about it. And maybe this is a question that Murali may want to answer. Innovix actually started off with a bunch of people that were electroplating guys. So there are ways in which it may be a great example of people who are coming from a completely different part of electrochemistry, sort of contributing towards a different part of electrochemistry. I will say that the principles are the same, right? I mean, I've never understood. I mean, at the end of the day, lithium metal batteries are an electroplating reaction. You plate lithium on a surface, right? If you're an electrochemist, you're an electrochemist, right? To me, it doesn't really matter if you did plating or hydrogen or batteries, right? It's all the same thing. So I suspect that if you wanted to, it's easy enough to do something about it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Venkat, for answering all the questions.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you again, Dr. Venkat. That was amazing. And just for the audience, if you have more questions, keep them coming. We will either take them towards the end, or we can even have Dr. Venkat answer them via email or something later. We are kind of running slow on time, so we want to catch up a little bit. Thank you. So let's move forward. We want to have Dr. Satyanarayan, who is the Chief Scientist and Head of PPMG at CECRI, talk to us today. However, he had a personal commitment and could not make it. He did send a message to us, and I just want to read this out, and I'm going to read it verbatim. CECRI BTech alumni spread across the globe and wherever they go, they bear the torch of CECRI and taking CECRI's image to greater heights. We are really proud of these success ambassadors. From CECRI side, whatever help facilitation required, we will wholeheartedly extend the same. We continue to give away the memorial prizes as we are doing. From alumni side, we expect to reciprocate with multiple activities to take CECRI BTech new heights by creating great corpus fund and establishing a lot of facilities, as is being done by, I guess, other alumni associations like IITians, and also extend help to the coming batches for better placement, etc. I wish a great beginning to this alumni association and a great success. So we are very thankful to him, even though he couldn't make it, he did send a message. So moving on, we're going to request Dr. Naveen Chandrasekharan. I think pretty much everybody on the call knows Dr. Naveen, and he's going to talk about some of the work he's been doing with our BTech graduates and also students. Let me give you a quick bio of Dr. Naveen. Everybody knows he's a scientist at CECRI. He himself is an alumnus of CECRI and holds a PhD in chemistry from Missouri University of Science and Technology. His research focuses on recovery of metals from primary and secondary resources through electrohydro and pyrometallurgical routes, graphite beneficiation from low-grade graphite ores, synthesis of boron and silicon carbide through carbothermal and pyrometallurgical routes, development of large-scale magnesium recovery from primary and secondary sources through molten salt analysis. This is just a small part of what I put here because there's not enough space. He's doing a lot more. So far, he has had 25 research publications in various journals. He's also the recipient of a very prestigious award, the CSIR Young Scientist Award in the year 2018. So Dr. Naveen, please unmute yourself and you can talk. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ashok. So it's a privilege to be here to address our friends. So good morning to my friends in the US and good evening to the friends in India. So as an alumni, I mean in CECRI we are four alumni as scientists. I mean Dr. Sundar is the principal scientist over here. He's in the lead acid batteries division. Myself in electroplating and electrometallurgy division. Dr. Malmi is in electro-inorganics division, and Dr. Sindhuja is working in computer networking and facility unit. So before me, as the alumni secretary, Dr. Sundar Mayavan was taking care of this particular activity. So so far we have conducted two alumni alumni get-togethers. One is the Silver Jubilee. Commemorating the CFE's Center for Education's 25th year celebration was done as Silver Jubilee celebrations, and Pearl Jubilee celebrations was done by 2018. So before 2020, we had a meeting with our director. I was in CSA. I was in CECRI, and four of our CECRI BTech alumni, Dr. Chok, Dr. Anand, Dr. Joshi, and Mr. Sharif, they attended the meeting. I think Dr. Rajan and Mr. Rajan also attended the meeting, and from then we have decided not to collect the alumni fee from our students. I mean the current students of rupees 250, and from the financial year 2020 to 2021 we haven't collected the fee. So of course our director gave the permission, and she led us to start the alumni or an alumni association as the independent body both in India and USA, right? So we had some fixed deposits which was collected from the students, which has been put as a fixed deposit, and the interest from the fixed deposit is being given as the cash prize amounts for in memory of Hiran D. Barucha and K.V. Prasad Memorial Awards. So this award carries rupees 5,000 as cash prize. And recently, by the batch 2004 to 2008, on the memory of in the memory of Hari Prakash, a corpus fund of rupees 1,55,000 was given to us and was deposited into the account of CBETA or CECRI Alumni Association account. And that from that the interest from that amount was given as 2 awards was given for the meritorious student for the first year and the third year students. Whoever got the first grades, first and first grades. So also Mr. Varasimhan, from batch 95 to 99, he is giving away an award of rupees 5,000 for it's a Varasimhan scholarship for proficiency in mathematics. So these are the activities which we were doing, and of course we were also supporting the placement. Placement activities which is being held and which held before to all our current and past students. I also thank Mr. Joshi, Dr. Joshi, Mr. Sharif for conducting the one of the programs for the placement activities. So I really appreciate them. And that's all from me. If you have any questions, I'm ready to, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Naveen. I know you've been very helpful to the students in many different ways. And you being a alumnus yourself, you understood what we have gone through and how you can help us and all that. And you, along with the other 4 scientists you talked about. So we are very grateful for that. Santosh, is there any questions for Dr. Naveen?
Ashok, there's no questions.
Okay, we'll move forward. And just to the audience, if you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat window, and we will answer accordingly. So let's move forward. Next, we want to announce the board. As you know, we had elections recently, and then we have actually come up with the board. And there are 3 categories. There are a board of directors with voting privileges, and there's at-large board of directors, and there is 2 members that are non-voting. So just so you know, pretty much everybody that you see here will be in some form helping each other and helping the alumni as we move forward. Now, of course, till the next elections, at that time, something might change. So I'm the president. My name is Ashok. Then the vice president is Anand Natarajan. He graduated in 1994. The secretary is Gopal Sridharan. He graduated in 1992 along with me. Treasurer is Yogesh Anguchami, graduated in 2005. We have a core team lead for India and non-US operations, and Rangesh Shiva will lead that. He graduated in 2001. We have a core team lead for technology, and Santosh Kumar will lead that. He graduated in 2019. And we also have communications and outreach, and Mohan Kumar will lead that. He graduated in 2007. Now, Joshi and Rajan have been extremely involved, and they've been doing a lot of work for us, but they've chosen to be non-voting board members, but they'll still be on all the calls. They'll still be helping us in pretty much the same way they used to before. So this is the way we have our board structured. Once again, if you have questions about the board or what people do and all that, there's a lot of information in the bylaws. Feel free to go read them. But if you have questions, feel free to ask also. Go and put it in the chat window. And also, I want to say the pictures are the top 4 pictures on the right. I should have said this before, but anyway, the at-large board of directors are on the left, and then Joshi and Rajan are on the right, bottom right. Okay, moving forward, we want to talk about what we're going to do in the next year and also going forward, and Anand will lead us through that.
Great. Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, please go.
Okay, great. I am already super excited, right? It's weekend, and we had so much energy already generated by this, Joshi walking us through the timeline and Venkat's incredible, this is exactly what we wanted, right? In order to get the thing going. And also, Sharif, your inputs about how you've been involved. So we are really excited. And I think just having worked behind the scenes with Ashok and quite a few others on this call, right? Just to get to the point of forming the alumni has been a lot of, blood, sweat, and tears, but I think it seems to be well worth it now, right, Ashok? So, yeah, a lot of boring documents and forming this and that. So we still are pretty close to getting everything done, at least. So as you also heard from Dr. Naveen too, right? We had this meeting. We got the blessings from the CECRI director in order to move forward, which is great. And so we decided intentionally to kind of start the formation here in the US because many of us are aware of this, are beginning to do it here. So we're just finalizing some of the details in terms of creating and getting what is called as a non-profit status. We're already fully incorporated, as Joshi mentioned, right, which is great. So we are a formal entity now. And so obviously we just had our elections, right? And so we've been having like an informal board meeting structure so far. And we did it on time. We promised ourselves that we will have a board before the end of the year, and we did it. I think that's kudos to everybody on this panel and everybody on the call here. So we'll start off with the formal board meetings from January 22, right? And the idea is, right, to try to meet at least quarterly, if not more, and then also have quite a few meetings, right, for the members such as this. And so, and also, right, we are a nonprofit, right? We don't have any other funding or donation, so we would need to raise funds. We don't have any other revenue source. So those are all something that we are going to work out as a board, and we'll certainly be as transparent as we can, as we've been so far, right? Continue to be transparent. So if you go to the next slide, Ashok. So why are we doing what we are doing, right? This actually was very intentional when we wrote our bylaws, right? We wanted to make sure we serve, our ourselves, right? Our alumni, right? Which you're all here, and I'm very excited to see the numbers. We had about 45, sometimes even 50 people attending the call at various times during the past 45 minutes. So we want to help our students. We want to help our alumni. We certainly want to give back to our alma mater, right? So in terms of mentorship, we want to help with career placement, and we want a better structure to continue to do the great work that Joshi and others have been doing, right? Technology and outreach, we want to do that, such as what you heard from Venkat today, right? And conference paper presentations, right? Sometimes we struggle to go to a conference because we don't have enough money to do that. So we would need some kind of stipend assistance. And to me, right, certainly, yeah, we have all these separate WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups. Having one common alumni is so important, right? I mean, I'm able to reconnect with so many of you, and kind of triggers my memory. I'm getting old, so I'm forgetting a lot of my juniors and seniors too. So hopefully we have social activities and alumni family gathering. If you've been in any part of any other alumni, you know how important these are in just keeping your balance and social life, right? So that is really something that we're looking forward to, right? Hopefully there are various units like this, US, Middle East, India, wherever we are, right, across the globe. And community volunteering, right? We are a nonprofit, so certainly, where we can, when we can, we certainly need to be doing some volunteering work. And we are looking for recommendations, right, from everybody. This is an all-in approach. We are not here top-down, right? We need inputs from you to keep us running and understand what is important, what are the priorities. So the more engagement we have from you, for instance, through the forum, through the website, through Facebook, whatever that may be, is really important. And just a quick reconnection, right? I think I was pointing out when Venkat pointed out, right? So many of my batchmates and the juniors and seniors were pointed out there, right there, and how they helped Venkat. And I was also trying to relate to how when he and I met before, right? So all these are important. That is something that you will find that just triggers good memories. And I'm hoping to find out. I even forgot most of my professors' names. So I'll be honest. So, so I'm trying to reconnect and find out more about what is happening today. So, thank you.
Very much, Anand. I appreciate that. Let's we are coming to an end, and I think we are willing to take not willing to. It'd be great if you can send us questions now, and also if you have suggestions, you can send them out. And Santosh, you got a lot of work now. Hopefully, you can start reading them out.
Okay. That's a question from Dr. Naveen. It goes as, how about including flagship projects related to electrochemistry, to other current BTech students, preferably third year?
I think I take that more as a suggestion than a question. Absolutely, I think we should try to figure out how we can do that. Absolutely great suggestion, Dr. Naveen. We'll look into it. We'll probably bring it up in our next meeting and then figure out how we can try to go about that.
That's a question from Manjunathan. Do we have a forum to discuss stuff?
Interesting question, because we have many forums. The official forum is CECRIALumni.org. You go there and there's a forum, and then you can ask questions and discuss. We also have one WhatsApp group, and we have a Telegram group. But if it's something that's important, I would rather you go to the CECRIALumni.org and post it there. Rajan, can you either confirm or deny what I said?
Yeah, sure. So a little bit additional information on that, Ashok, I would like to provide. So we have two main channels. That is the forum.cecrialumni.org, where you can go and list your questions and stuff. And it is owned by us, not by any other entity. So we all your information is secure and safe there, and we can seek help from all the 500 registered alumni, further escalating that if needed, right? So that's one channel. The other one is I really need help from all of you. If an alumni has any achievements or anything to share, please send it to us, to the Alumni Association. And again, the contact is available on CECRIALumni.org. There's a contact section there. If you send it to us, we would like to showcase that and post it on CECRIALumni.org. Either featuring it as on the news section or about an alumni, right? So we would like to do that. We would like to keep that website active. So that's a second, that basically that puts our information out to the whole world, right? So one is the internal forum, the other one is the public website for everyone to look at. So and all the contacts and everything is on CECRIALumni.org. So please go check it out. And the third one I would like to add is we really need all of your help, right? We always have some activities going on, and we need your help from each and every alumni out there, and the current students as well. So please again contact us, and we will find some task or work that you can contribute and you can help us out, right, to move this association to the next level. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Rajan. There's a question from Ganesh. How to raise funds for the alumni?
That's a great question. So right now, what we're thinking is we decided not to not to charge people for membership, and there are several reasons for that. And I'll not go into the reasons because it can get pretty long. But what we want to do is go and ask people for funds, as in terms of donations. That's what we want to do, and we want to see how it goes. Now we have a pretty aggressive goal. Right now, we didn't want to throw numbers out, but we have a fairly aggressive goal, and we want to see how far we can cut, especially the first year, right? Because this is the first time, and we don't know how it's going to go. And depending on how things turn out, then we might start adding other things and other ways of collecting money, either through memberships maybe, or some other ways, and we will diversify later. Anand, do you want to take a stab at it?
No, I think that's you summed it up, right? We are looking for donations and contributions, as we speak. We just need to create a plan as to what that means and how much, and how will it we have to be self-sustaining, right, as a nonprofit, and also have enough to be able to have some buffer.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ashok and Anand. There's a question from Dr. Sundamayavan. How to rekindle interest to go for higher studies to the present batch students? To get placement for all 40 is getting more difficult.
That's a good question. Joshi, can I defer that question to you? Because you have some good ideas. And Joshi and also Sharif.
Yeah, the talk from Venkat, I think that is very helpful. It's like, so decarbonization and lithium batteries. So these kind of interests people have, and they can find they can do higher studies, and I guess um, yeah, that like, and also it's their inner interest, and so um, gathering interest from these kind of talks, I think the students can develop interest in studies one way. And placement wise, I think I understand not 40 students, but from my statistics, what I understood is like there are like because of the COVID, the situation went bad, and even during the last year, I think the placement was I think close to there were like 3 to 4 or 4 to 6 people not fully placed, not placed, and around 30 were either in higher studies or placed in companies in India. So I think it's going well, and so once as years as I think once we are out of COVID, things will be back on track. And during this COVID, we can help as much as possible by sending messages to senior alumni, like we did last year. So we have a lot of options to work on. Yes, Sharif, if you want to add something.
Yeah, I would reiterate the same thing, Joshi. Getting job in this COVID time is getting difficult. But last year, what we did was really remarkable. Organized plannings and advertising through LinkedIn pages, and then contacting as many companies as possible, getting help from senior. We have achieved a lot of things in last year. This year also, we need to repeat the same thing to achieve maximum result. I mean, rekindling interest for the student is up to students. If they watch people like Venkat Srinivasan, Sridharan Shah, Anand Ashok, they will automatically get interest to uh, go to do higher studies. I think in recent times, I don't know how much attractive was the higher studies to the students leaving India and spending a lot of years abroad. Some people are passionate from the beginning to do higher studies. Some people think a lot to do that. It's up to the students. Um, but I think by watching our alumnus performing abroad, they will get interest automatically. On the other hand, the job we have to help as much as possible from the alumni. This is what our dean also repeatedly saying that is a request to all the alumni, because a lot of people are in a higher position and in good companies. We need to help the students to get some networking and showcasing our talents to the outside world.
It's amazing.
Ashok, I'll just add one quick comment here, right? I think just from my own personal journey, so don't give up, right? And it may come back. So, for instance, I started with something else for the 10, 15 years and then transitioned into more core energy in way. So, even if you have to start off somewhere, if you think that is interesting, like what Venkat pointed out, right? This is a good time. We were, I think, 25 years early, right? So, I think when I graduated at least, so don't give up, right?
Yeah, this is one good suggestion to add into the alumni association, like how to rekindle higher study interest to the students. This could be one agenda that we can all work on.
Good point. We'll do that. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. There's a question from Yuvraj. Is there any special plans for women empowerment, particularly BTech girls placement?
That's an amazing question. We were actually hoping to have a girl on our board, but unfortunately we didn't get any nominations. But hopefully next time we'll see some girls on the board. But as far as the actual question is concerned, is there any specific thing that's being done for women right now? I don't think anything specific is done for women. And we will take this as a suggestion and we'll see how we can implement this. I think it's a great suggestion. We need that kind of impetus for women, especially that are starting off something new. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a question from Nagalakshmi. Can the CECRI MTech graduates also join this group?
CECRI MTech graduates can join the group. We have two. They can be members, right, guys? I forgot if.
Yes,
MTech,
yeah, they can be guest members on our association. That's so I think it is written up.
yeah, that's right. It's in the bylaws. Yeah, they can be members.
Yeah, we can have a guess for now, and then we can consider that later. For now, the members are here.
There's news from Rajan. Rajan, do you want to read it out or?
I think Joshi is going to do that. I think. Yeah.
So Rangesh just told us that he's donating rupees 50,000 to the association today, and so Ashok, if you want to talk about it.
That's amazing. There, we just started our fundraising, I guess. Yeah, thanks. we really appreciate that. Certainly, that's amazing. Yeah, certainly, especially big amounts, but any amount is great. Like we said, we are not charging membership fees, so this is great, and this will also be an inspiration for others. You know, who can afford whatever they can afford, they should donate. Thank you. Thanks.
This is in dollars, right, Joshi? Just kidding.
Okay, just for information, right? So Rangesh is one of the board members who got selected, and he is from 2001 batch. I know him very well. So just so you guys all know, so who is contributing there? Thanks, Rangesh. Yeah.
Thanks, Rangesh. And that's a question from Ganesh. When is the next alumni meet?
Alumni meet is scheduled for January. I don't want you to hold me onto that because it depends on how the first few meetings go. Because we want to have a good enough content so that we can present to you and keep it interesting. We don't want to come in and say, "Oh, we have just done one thing," you know. So we're tentatively scheduling it for sometime towards the end of January.
Just to add to Ashok's point, yes, I think we have to have the board kind of get its feet, create the strategic plan. So the board will continue to meet the larger alumni meeting with the members and our technology discussion. We have to come up with what that cadence looks like. We don't know that yet. I just want, I saw some Santosh, right? You can point out about some of the inputs in the panel about the women empowerment and all.
Definitely, like we can encourage a lot of the upcoming students, especially the freshly outcome alumni. We can reach them and talk more about it because being someone like them being on the board, it will give us a lot of fresh idea, which will be highly encouraging the fellow students to also look into a lot of other aspects. It will actually help them to think that they can also do it out of the box, lot of stuff. Yeah.
Sorry, was there a question?
No, I was just giving a such. Sorry.
Good deal.
There's no more questions. If there is any questions, please feel free to hit on the chat.
I think that's good. Okay, if you still have questions, you're welcome to talk to us later. You can send an email or you can message in one of the other portals. And we want to thank you all for joining today. Hopefully this was actually beneficial for you. And there'll be a lot more to come. We have, we really want to start off strong. I think we have started, and we want to continue that momentum going. And we certainly need your support, right? And we saw about 50 people joining today. We want to see 100 people next time, right? And so hopefully many of these questions kind of get answered by themselves. One of the questions about, you know, how do you get that impetus to go abroad or whatever, right? You will see more and more people doing that, more and more people joining, and then you can get answers for those questions. So thank you again for joining. Good day and good night.
Good day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Good luck. Happy holidays, advance Happy New Year.